This is Kenneth Wong, Senior Editor for DE 24/7, as part of the DE webcast series. Today, I'm speaking to Jeff Kinder, Autodesk Executive VP of Product Development and Manufacturing Solutions, about a new study that Autodesk has released called The State of Design and Make. Jeff, welcome. Would you mind giving us some idea about what kind of report that is and what does it reveal?
Sure, Kenneth, I'm happy to, and thank you for having me. So we released today our first annual State of Design and Make report. As you know, we have long talked about at Autodesk, we've long talked about design and make and how they work together, and how really the only way you can achieve breakthrough productivity for manufacturers is by bringing design and make together. And so this report is intended to capture what's on the mind of players in our industry. And we conducted over 2,500 interviews with customers and principals in in all of our industries, manufacturing, AEC, media and entertainment, just to find out what's top of mind for them. And we had three really themes that emerged. One is sustainability is no longer an afterthought. Two is how attracting and retaining talent and skilled employees is a top concern. And the third theme was around digital maturity and how digital maturity helps customers in their ability to adapt to changing circumstances.
Why don't we start with sustainability then? It seems like we have all heard anecdotes about how the younger generation of consumers prefer sustainable products. How would that translate to Autodesk R&D? How would that shape, for example, the direction that you might be taking about products like Fusion 360?
Sure. And we have seen from customers seeking and almost demanding more sustainable products. And by the way, as an aside, our employees expect it too. Our employees expect us to help our customers deliver more sustainable outcomes. But there are probably three ways in which that would show up in Fusion, for example. The first one is around traceability. And so customers are particularly, I think it's strongest in Europe and now, but I imagine it will spread throughout the world. But customers are seeking the ability to trace their all the inputs into their products, the raw materials or the sub products that may go into a final assembly, so they understand where they came from and environmental footprint that may have been left by each of those parts. So number one is traceability. Two, with respect to our R&D efforts, is just the ability to measure the output. What is the impact that you might see from a product that is developed using Fusion? And we have various tools right now to calculate carbon, for example. And then the last one, and this is to me almost a deeper impact, is a lot of our customers are looking at how can they use tools like generative design to reduce the number of parts that may be in a final product. And this has a couple of benefits. One, there's just less waste if there are fewer parts. But two, the logistics of bringing parts together and the environmental impact of logistics and transportation can be diminished by having fewer products.
According to the study, and that actually is one of the things that surprised me, more than half the respondents said that their companies are hiring employees who lack the skills needed for their positions and plan to train them. So is there any insight you can give us, Jeff, on what's causing a skill shortage, particularly in manufacturing?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. And we have heard this a lot from customers over the years. And I think there are a few things that are coming together to create this situation in manufacturing. First, the manufacturing labor force has been shrinking, for a long period. There've been a decades-long period of a shrinking manufacturing workforce, and even education, broadly across manufacturing had seen lower numbers. Now, by the way, I think that's turning. As an aside, I think that's turning. I think we're entering in this Renaissance period. But so you had a kind of a macro shrinking. And then the pandemic hit, and that was a shock to the system that created more retirements, more exits. And those exits just frankly exceeded the number of new entrants or new skilled labor that was coming into the market. We heard that distinctly from customers. Now, in parallel to this, the technology is changing rapidly, and that changes the skills that are needed. So the movement to the cloud, the emphasis on collaboration, compute power increasing, tools like generative design and now generative AI, they're really changing what skills are needed. So on one hand, you've got a declining workforce and an accelerated period of retirements, and then suddenly you need new skills. And so those two kind of come together in a way that I think creates an acute shortage and pain on the skilled labor front. I mean, here's a great example. With globalization, we had a flight, there was a flight of many specific manufacturing skills to the markets where things were being created. And that worked, by the way, in a time of very stable macro economic factors and geopolitical risks. Now that those have stepped up a little bit, whether it's inflation, whether it's supply chain challenges, and let alone a war, that's led to more onshoring and reshoring, and those skills just don't exist. And so that's a challenge that we find, we hear from customers, and we heard in this report, our customers are dealing with.
The report also states that the future global landscape feels more uncertain now than 3 years ago. We know, of course, we're now just coming out of the pandemic, and we're now grappling with the supply chain uncertainties brought on by warfare in Europe, for example. What are the other uncertainties that might be affecting manufacturing sector?
Yes, I think you covered the most important ones. They're geopolitical and macroeconomic uncertainties, but they include, inflation. Right, so inflation is a big factor for manufacturers in the sense that if they have overly manual processes, those just all became more expensive. Now, if you combine that with some of the macroeconomic uncertainties, which could lead to soft demand or at least unpredictable demand, if your cost basis has gone up and your top line is less certain, it really has the potential to squeeze your profit margins. And so that's what we're hearing from customers is those uncertainties are a challenge to manage. Top line is less predictable. Supply chains are at risk with some of the geopolitical factors. And the question is, how can manufacturers adapt fast enough, to those changing circumstances? What we're seeing, though, which is, exciting and we think is the right direction for manufacturers, is to respond by becoming more efficient to control their bottom line and invest in tools that will bring more automation and reduce their overall cost basis and make them more efficient, to be honest. That's what I think manufacturers are seeking to do right now is if your top line is uncertain, how do you make your cost line more efficient?
When in the report, you ask the respondents to rate themselves on digital maturity, it seems like the manufacturers in Asia region rate themselves rather highly, thinking that they are mature, digitally much more mature than the North American respondent seems rather unsure about their digital maturity. Can we talk about what it means to be digitally mature?
Sure. Yeah, it's funny you're highlighting one of the bigger surprises to me or ahas as I read the report and the results was the different levels of self-grading of digital maturity around the world. And I don't know if it's, some countries are harder graders than others. But there were distinct differences. And like you said, North America, the US rated itself very low, whereas, some of the Asia Pacific countries, particularly China, rated itself very high. And we just found that interesting. Digital maturity it's a great concept. And I talked about this at our investor day, gosh, I think 3 years ago. And the concept was you're never done transforming. So the idea of embarking on digital transformation and embracing that is really important, but you're never done. You just reach a state of maturity. And what that means to me, really high level, is you're not afraid of technology change. You're almost excited by it. That when you reach a state of digital maturity means you're embracing and excited by the idea of technology change because you're more flexible. You've adapted your processes, you've adapted your technologies so that ultimately you can be more nimble as a company. You can shift around quickly. And that's what makes you, as I said earlier, one of the themes was digitally mature companies feel more resilient and more flexible. And so I think that's what's happened. They've already gone through some of the hard work to change their processes. They've probably brought their costs down in so doing. And they have technology that is more modular and more interoperable and easy to connect and bring together. And those benefits, they pay off, and they are a sign of being digitally mature.
All right, very good. Jeff, thank you so much for sharing your insights on the report. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kenneth. It's great to talk to you.
Until next time, this is Kenneth Wong, Senior Editor for DE 24/7, and we are out.